Okay, so basically we're going to be doing a reproductive system crash course. So basically this is for both CSEC biology and the CSEC HSB. So even though CSEC biology is more general, and CSEC HSB is more focused on the human body, it's the same thing. It's the same thing in CSEC biology and it's the same thing in CSEC HSB. So for this particular topic, it's in both syllabuses, right? So you're gonna find the reproductive system in the CSEC biology syllabus, you're gonna find it in the CSEC HSB syllabus also. So you don't have to worry, say, okay, somebody something them you not have to know because you do CSEC biology, or somebody something them you not have to know because you do CSEC HSB. It's literally the same thing. The only thing is that CSEC biology students do a lot more in terms of plants and animals and all that stuff because it's more general. But CSEC HSB is focused on the human body, and in this topic we're talking about the human body. So basically the reproductive system is what we're going through. So we're going to try our best to go through this, explain it, and just to get an understanding and like an overview of what this topic is about. So if you never learn nothing, what I would advise you to do is take some notes. That is the first thing. Take some notes as me I go through the slides them. Read it as you go along as well. Also, so take some notes, read it, and stuff like that. So yep, so it's very simple. It should not be too long, I think, but anyways, we'll just get started. But yeah, so basically the goal is we want to get through these particular topics. So basically the reproductive system is very broad, right? There's a lot that goes into it. So what we want to talk about is sexual and asexual reproduction, the structure and function of our reproductive organs, both for the male and the female. Although, the female one I'm going to take up a bit more time because a lot more goes on there. Then you have the menstrual cycle, the birth process, birth control, and basically the importance of family planning, and then the issues relating to abortion. So yeah, this is just like a quick crash course, so we're going to take our time and we're going over everything right in a timely manner. So okay, so what I would say before we will get any further is to go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe. And then also you can check out this email right here. Check out the email right here if you want tutoring for CSEC biology or CSEC HSB. And yeah, so let us just get started on this reproductive system topic. So let's get into it. Okay, so if we're talking about reproduction, the first thing is that you have to know what reproduction even means. What does it even mean to reproduce, right? And especially in today's culture, sometimes we use the word so loosely, like, oh, reproduction, oh, people just have baby and ray. And if when we ask what is reproduction a while ago, me say that and you say, oh, people have picnic, if that was the first thing that come to your mind, technically you are correct, right? You are correct. So basically, when we talk about reproduction, it's a process by which new offsprings are produced. And the word reproduction, it does not only go for human beings, it goes for animals. So animals, once you are living, you can reproduce. It is one of the 7 characteristics of all living organisms, the ability to reproduce. So humans reproduce, have offsprings, birds, dogs, fish in the water. Once it's living, it can reproduce. So just keep that in mind. And even though we're kind of focusing more on the human aspect, just know so reproduction goes for everything. So even the plants, even our flowers, right? So we have to take into consideration that it's not just humans that reproduce, even plants need to reproduce also. So basically there are 2 main types of reproduction. We have our sexual reproduction and our asexual reproduction. So off the bat, when I say sexual versus asexual reproduction, human beings don't undergo asexual reproduction. Let's just put that out there, right? We don't undergo asexual reproduction. like, how would I say? So one example of a organism that can reproduce asexually are plants. Literally, plants don't need two separate genders, or yeah, we think, yeah, they don't need any gametes to basically fuse, right? In order to have offsprings, in order to have new plants being produced. Humans reproduce by sexual reproduction, meaning that both a male and female gametes have to fuse and fertilization has to happen in order for you to say that something undergo some kind of sexual reproduction. It has to fuse, male and female has to fuse, right? For asexual reproduction, it means that no fusion not take place, no fertilization took place. That is when you can say something is very much asexual. So human beings cannot undergo asexual reproduction, but plants can. And even though plants undergo asexual reproduction, they can also undergo sexual reproduction as well. So if you look at sexual reproduction right here, this is what humans undergo. That is how them have people have a baby. Male and female come together. You have the sperm cell, you have the egg cell, the sperm cells swim, go to the egg, fertilization takes place, boom. Somebody pregnant, and then boom, them have the baby. That's the offspring. That's literally the process. So yeah, we're going to go into a bit more detail about the advantages and the disadvantages for both of these types of reproduction. Okay, so basically, let us basically compare them more in depth. So basically, you have sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. So basically, what we want to see are basically the disadvantages and the so basically both the advantages and the disadvantages of each type of reproduction. So in our sexual reproduction, obviously we said before that it involves two parents, fusion of gametes, fertilization, all that stuff is going to happen. Asexual reproduction, and you can literally note this down as a big, big difference. So if a question should ask what is the difference or name two, three differences between sexual and asexual reproduction, this is what you can say. You can say that sexual reproduction involves male and female gametes. Asexual reproduction involves no gametes, sexual reproduction, fusion of gametes. Asexual reproduction, no fusion of gametes happen whatsoever. And one of the biggest things when you're comparing asexual and sexual reproduction is that in asexual reproduction, what makes it so unique is that it have one parent involved, right? And what's so unique about asexual reproduction is that the offsprings are literally identical to the parent. When I say identical, I mean them identical. You know, like twin, right? Them literally identical, like identical twin. The parents and the child that look like exactly the same. So with asexual reproduction, there is no variation. There is no variation at all. So that disadvantage for asexual reproduction is actually an advantage to sexual reproduction. So in sexual reproduction, they produce offspring that have variation. And you might say, why does it even matter if there is variation or not? You probably wonder. But variation is very important for a species, basically very important for a species species to survive basically because variation helps. It's like, how would I describe it? It's basically equipping the next generation to be able to withstand different conditions, right? So basically, it helps the species to adapt to new environments, help to reduce the spread of disease, can be used to increase food production. And the disadvantage to sexual reproduction is that it takes a longer time to produce offspring. So, for example, compare human beings. Compare human beings to what example could I really, So, for example, I can't think of an example right now, but compare human beings having, call it, all right, a pregnant woman have the baby in her belly, in her belly for 9 months. Is it that 9 months? to give one or two child, right? Because the chances of having triplets and quadruplets, all of that stuff is very, very, very low. So say she have one kidney or two in her belly at a time for 9 months, almost 1 year. Compared to plants, if the plant pollinate and whatever, the plant can grow one entire area in that exact same time if you compare it like that. But look at it like this. So if there is no variation in asexual reproduction, right? And let's just say that there's a disease, right? And this plant is not, what should I say? It does not have the mechanism to fight off the disease. And the plant, what the word now? Susceptible, right? The plant is susceptible to the disease or whatever. And then that plant do asexual reproduction and produce 20 other plants that cannot fight off the disease. At the end of the day, all of them are go dead. All of them are go dead because basically the parent no good and all of the them no good either. Cause all of them have the disease, right? So that is why variation is so important. So that is why variation is so important, and that is why human beings, you different from your mother different from your mother, and everybody. So even though you share the same genes, the genes not identical to the T like that. It don't identical to the T. It's not share some, but there is variation because you have some of your mother, some of your father mixed together. So if something already in your mother bloodline, we could have kill everybody. The thing is that fully enough your genes alone you carry. So maybe something in your father genes more dominant, and that is why it don't affect you. Like, for example, sickle cell or something like that, right? It's not dominant, right? So it don't affect you, but you have the recessive trait for it or something like that. But you basically get the point when you compare them. That at the end of the day, they both have their advantages and their disadvantages. Variation is very important in sexual reproduction and in asexual reproduction. They can actually produce a larger number of offsprings in a shorter period of time. For example, we get the example about the plants. The plant produce 20 plants. In the time when one pregnant a human, for example, a human being take pregnant 9 months with one child or with two child maximum, typically. The time what it basically take if we have that one or two picnic, the plants produce so much other plants during that 9 month period, like a lot. So you can basically see the difference. And yeah, so the disadvantage of asexual reproduction is that they have an increased risk of disease and also no variation and overall just they're kind of what should I say, like a lower quality. It's almost like copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. But what if there is something wrong with the parent? It means every offspring will have that issue as well. You get what I mean? With sexual reproduction, you never really know. Is either them have the disease or them don't. You honestly won't know because variation makes the difference in sexual reproduction. So basically, we're moving on to the female reproductive system. So I would suggest that you at least know how to draw this, right? I would suggest you at least know how to draw it. So basically, let's just go through the label. So basically, this is our reproductive system, and in here, right here, is the uterus. So the space in here is the uterus. So I feel like we're gonna start from the wrong place, but okay. So basically, this is where the vagina is down here, right? So this is the vaginal opening down here, right? So the vaginal opening, and then you have the cervix to the back. So basically, if for example you go to the gynecologist or something like that, this area is basically what they would be able to see from the opening back to the cervix. That's all they can see. And then up more is the uterus. So basically, uterus is very important. The uterus is very important. Like for example, when they say the uterus lining, for example, with the menstrual cycle, the uterus lining would basically shed, or basically yeah, it would break down, uterus wall break down, like what I'm always saying. But basically, this is the ovary, this is the fallopian tube, and this is Frimbe. You don't really have to necessarily know this one right here, but everything else, the vaginal opening, the cervix, the uterus, the fallopian tube, and the ovary, I would suggest you know to draw this, or at least have a mental presentation in your mind of how it exactly looks. So anyways, let's go over the functions then. So the first one is the vaginal opening. So basically, it allows sperm to enter the reproductive tract to potentially fertilize an egg for, and basically, yeah, so for reproduction, also menstruation, so it provides an exit route for the menstrual blood from the uterus. It also functions in childbirth, serves as a birth canal during delivery, and also for sexual function. But basically, everything goes on with the opening, like everything have to pass the opening right there. So if you give birth, it have to pass right here. So if menstruation, it have to pass right here. So this is very, very important. So now the uterus, which it is described as a pear-shaped muscular organ that don't spell properly, but yeah, that functions to nourish and host a fertilized egg until the fetus or offspring is ready to be delivered. So basically, it would be implanted on here, basically. And the ovaries, so basically, the ovaries are the female reproductive glands that produce the eggs and hormones that regulate the menstrual cycle, fertility, and pregnancy. And you have the fallopian tube, which its primary function is to transport an egg from the ovary to the uterus, right? So basically, the entire fertilization process would start with an egg being released from the ovary. The egg would travel through the fallopian tube. The sperm would wait in the fallopian tube for the egg. If the sperm and egg meet, fertilization takes place. So the fertilized egg, which is called a zygote, would travel down the fallopian tube. The zygote becomes a corolla. You're not really sure about what that means. Then a blastocyst as it travels to the uterus, and then it would eventually implant in the uterus lining where it can grow into a fetus. So basically, that is why the uterus is so important. And basically, if that implantation does not take place, that is when menstruation happens, right? So the body is preparing to have a baby every single month. So when the body is preparing to have a baby every single month, it is expecting, right? It is expecting that the egg, the fertilized egg, is going to implant on the uterus, right? So if that implantation does not happen, if it does not take place, then what's going to happen? The walls are going to break down, and it's going to break down in the form of blood, basically. So that's how the entire menstruation process happens, right? So then let's talk about the cervix. So it's a vital part of the female reproductive system. It has many functions, including fertility, pregnancy, childbirth, menstruation, and also protection. So as it relates to fertility, so the cervix allows the sperm to pass into the uterus during ovulation, pregnancy. So the cervix is what protects the growing fetus during the pregnancy, childbirth. The cervix dilates to allow the baby to pass through when, as in them push out the baby, right? Like for example, if I hear them say, "Oh, 2 centimeters dilated" or whatever you want to say, that is basically what they mean. And then you have menstruation where the cervix opens slightly to allow menstrual blood to flow out of the uterus. Protection, the cervix secretes mucus to prevent bacteria and other harmful microbes from entering the uterus. And in recognition, the cervix recognizes and prevents pathogenic entry. Right, so you can see that the cervix plays a very big role. Okay, so basically this is the male reproductive system now, and basically just look at it, just look at it. So this right here, this tube is called vas deferens. You have the pubic bone, which is not really too relevant. Then you have the penis, the urethra here, the scrotum, the testicle, epididymis, the prostate, rectum, and then the ejaculatory duct. So basically, this is the male reproductive system. So you can just look at both of them and literally compare them. In this situation, it would seem like the female reproductive system is a lot more simpler, and the male one is a bit more kind of all over the place. But as I mentioned before, as our seminal vesicle right there, but the pubic bone not really relevant, but everything else is really serving a purpose. Right, so this is a quick function for each of them. So testes produce sperm, the epididymis stores sperm, the vas deferens is what transport or conducts the sperm to the urethra, and then you have six accessory glands, which that one not necessarily there on that diagram, but it produce seminal fluid that nourishes the sperm. You have the urethra, which conducts the sperm to the outside, the penis, organ of copulation, the scrotum, provides proper temperature for testes basically, right? So it regulates the temperature. Words basically when we say that the the penis is an organ of copulation, basically it means that it it basically transfers sperm, right? That would be the best way for me to describe it. It transfers sperm. So for example, when it transfers the sperm, it is basically what deposits the sperm into the female reproductive tract. So basically, that's what it basically means. Now, if we go back on the diagram, right, I would just look at it more in depth. So basically, the vas deferens, we always produce it, we always pronounce it away, but the vas deferens. So basically, it's a muscular tube that carries sperm from the epididymis. So this is it, the right of person. This is the epididymis. So what the vas deferens does is that it carries sperm from the epididymis to the seminal vesicles, right? So look at it. It's carrying the sperm from here to the seminal vesicles, right? And then you probably say, what are the seminal vesicles? So basically, they are glands that produce a fluid rich in fructose, which nourishes the sperm and makes up a large part of the semen. So everything is working together in this reproductive system, right? And I would very much advise that you know at least one function for each of these, the relevant one there. Like the vas deferens, the urethra, testicles, scrotum, epididymis, the seminal vesicles, all of those stuff ensures you know the function, right? Ensures you know the function, but yeah. So we're with seminal vesicle, yeah, so it makes up semen essentially, right? Then you have the testes. So basically, it's located within the scrotum, as we can all see right here. This is the scrotum, and it's basically responsible for producing sperm and the male hormone testosterone. So the sperm is produced, and the vas deferens transports it to the seminal vesicle. Seminal vesicle makes the semen, right? So we already get that far. And then urethra here is what carries urine and semen out of the body, right? And then the epididymis, and let's talk about the prostate. So basically, it's a walnut-shaped gland that surrounds the urethra and adds fluid the semen, right? So that's really what it does. So we know that the seminal vesicle is what's going to make up the semen. We're saying that the prostate adds fluid to the semen right here, and then the scrotum is just a sack of skin that holds the testes and helps to regulate its temperature, right? And then this is pretty much self-explanatory, right? It's basically the opening where urine, semen, everything pass through the penis. So basically those are the functions, and then now the birth process. So the birth process. Okay, so the birth process, also known as labor, has three stages: the dilation, expulsion, and placental. So during labor, the cervix is going to open and the baby is going to move through the birth canal. So the first thing is dilation. So this is the first and longest stage of labor. And remember how me that say how you ever watch like maybe YouTube or some movie or something and you hear the doctor them say, oh, them say 2 centimeters dilated or 3 centimeters dilated, whatever you want to guess. But it's basically this. So this is the first part of the birth process. So basically the cervix is going to slowly open, and then during this stage, the pregnant woman would normally feel contractions, right? So they might be regular or irregular, or they might not even notice them completely. And as long as the doctor said it's safe to stay home, they would usually be at home during this stage. So like the early, like maybe 1 centimeter or 2 centimeter dilated, they don't need to be in the hospital, right? So when it start gets serious and they keep on, I guess having more contractions, more irregular contractions, or painful contractions, that is when them say, okay, we need to go to the hospital. So then expulsion, which is the second stage of labor, also known as the pushing stage. So basically, when you go to the hospital, well, not you, but when the pregnant person go to the hospital and then them check them and say, wow, them this much dilated. And then I say, well, listen, you already have the baby. So when them do that and them hook you up on the hospital bed and everything, or yeah, them hook you up on the hospital bed, put on drip on whatever you need and whatever. And depending on the situation, when them check the baby to see if the baby sit properly in the belly, yes or no, they will decide if you need a C-section or not. They will decide if you need an epidural or not. If them feel like they cannot push out the baby and all is going to be well, they're going to say just push out the baby. So yeah, so basically you go to the nurse or the midwife, I go monitor you and the baby, and then after them done set you up and everything, they are gonna tell you when it's safe to start pushing. So now once the baby's head is out, the rest of their body will eventually slip out during the next contraction. So basically that is the ideal way for giving birth. Usually them say make the head come out first because it's usually a lot more safer, right? It's a safer thing to do. If the baby sit upside down, sideways, across here, it will create a lot of problems, and in that case, they might tell the pregnant woman to have a C-section or something, or they might tell them to, I don't know, do something to try and turn the baby, right? So the placenta, which is the third stage of labor when the placenta is delivered, so this stage can take a few minutes or up to 60 minutes. So factors that influence, so basically that is when them push out the baby and them gonna go we call it cut the umbilical cord. But me pronounce it properly. Them gonna cut the cord and all that stuff, and boom, we have a brand new baby. So that's the last stage. So now anyways, the factors that influence the length of labor. So whether you've given birth, whether the person has given birth before, or the frequency or the effectiveness of the contractions. So for example, if the contractions are just bad off the get go, bam 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 bam, then you go push out the baby quick and fast. If the contractions if it's painful and the person is not like dilated very far, you're gonna sit down and pain and wait really and truly, right? So, and especially if the woman has given birth before, it's gonna be a lot easier to push out the baby because at least our body did it before, so our body can do it again. If it's the first time, the body might, whatever, but yeah. So anyways, signs of labor with the backache, diarrhea, and the most obvious one, um, the water breaking essentially, right? We don't really know about them other one here and there, so let's just scrap that at least for now. Okay, so this is just the birth process again. So basically, the baby pushes against the cervix, causing it to stretch. Stretching of the cervix causes nerve impulses to be sent to the brain. Brain stimulates posterior pituitary to release oxytocin, and then oxytocin causes smooth muscle lining, but basically for the uterus to contract. So everything is a process. So when the contractions start, bam, 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 that is when you know the baby will come out. Then the menstrual cycle. So the menstrual cycle, it happens every month, prepares the body for pregnancy. If there's no implantation, there will be no pregnancy. So no implantation equals having a menstrual, yeah, basically. So basically it would happen, so technically they say it should be every 28 days, but it can vary from 21 to 35 days. So once the female falls within 21 to 35 days, it should not be alarming that much, but again, talk to your doctor. No, anyway, cycles often longer and less irregular for the first. No, they're often longer and less regular for the first few years after a person starts menstruating. Cycles tend to shorten and become more regular with age, and it can be light or heavy, painful or pain-free, long or short, and still be considered typical because pain being associated with it is seen as normal and somewhat, basically it is very much normalized in today's society, right? About period cramps. It's normalized as if it's nothing, at least in today's society. So what happens during the menstrual cycle? So estrogen. So basically, once you're talking about the menstrual cycle, two very important hormones you have to talk about is estrogen and progesterone, basically. So estrogen, when those levels increase, they cause the lining of the uterus to thicken, right? So the uterus lining is going to thicken, and then ovulation, the egg is released from the ovary and moves into the fallopian tube. So now what the body is expecting at this point is, oh, I'm gonna get an egg will implant and you'll get pregnant. But when that doesn't happen, opposite happens. So next, the progesterone levels are going to increase after ovulation, while the estrogen levels decrease. So then, if the egg isn't fertilized, progesterone and estrogen levels decrease, and the line of the uterus is shed. So that's what comes off as blood at the end of the day. If the egg itself is not fertilized, this is basically just a diagram of the process of the menstrual cycle, right? So these mountain or hill would basically represent it. It would represent the uterus lining building up, right? And then obviously menstruation happens here. That is when it sheds and it goes down, then it starts build up all over again. And it happens again, type of build up, shed, build up, shed, build up, shed, build up, shed, all over again basically. Right? So there it is, lining of the uterus, and it would shed the blood. Alright, then over here, the next topic is basically about birth control. So basically, this diagram shows the less effective to the most effective, and the most effective method would be abstinence, right? That's the most effective method. If one should choose not to do that, what's the next step? So basically, the next step is, and basically, these are the least effective: spermicide, fertility awareness, meaning that you would track the cycle to basically be aware of when you're ovulating, because if somebody is ovulating, that would be the best time. That's basically the time when they're most likely to get pregnant, right? For some reason. We don't know the science behind that, but whatever. Okay. Yep, so less effective. So this is 71 to 76% effective. And then this next round is 78 to 82% effective, depending on the method. So you have the cervical cap, the sponge, then condom, that one is external, and then you have the diaphragm, but me think this, and this would actually go inside of the vagina. And then 92 to 97% effective, you have the patch, the ring, the pill, and you also have the shot. Then 99% effective, you have sterilization. Basically, this would mean that they tie their tubes, or them have an implant, or you get an IUD. But an implant is what them put in them arm, I think. I don't necessarily remember. But yeah, right? And then the next thing is the benefits of family planning. So basically, the benefits of family planning are the person gets to decide the number of children and also the spacing of the children, right? So for example, some people want their kids like with a two-year age gap, right? So they might say, oh, if you have one in 2024, you have the next one in 2026. You basically plan it exactly, right? So it prevents unintended pregnancies. So once you did family planning, you can't say, oh, we never did know, or oh, we never did plan for this, or we can afford to take care of more pitney, right? So that is the benefit of family planning. So it reduces the recourse to abortion. So basically, and basically these are both connected because one, unintended pregnancy, and then they say, oh, me don't want no pitney, me will get an abortion. So if you do family planning, you won't get pregnant. Okay, if you know you don't want no pitney, it makes sense you'll get pregnant, if that makes sense. Right? So reduce giving you the opportunity to go get an abortion. And then getting an abortion can have risks to it. So then also family planning decrease HIV and STIs, gender equality and education for women. So that basically the person is not necessarily, I'm just saying, no, just to have pitney back to back to back when they can't take care and they actually get to go to school and then get like them other life goals out the way as well. And this one is for females specifically. And then slower growth reduces pressure on resources. So basically, once you do family planning, you're able to plan a lot more. For example, if you know you can't take care of 5 pitney, it means you're not gonna have 5 pitney, right? That's basically what it means. And then cost savings as healthcare is by, right? So basically, this is just healthcare because I know you're pitney expensive. Children are expensive, so it goes back to resources. If you cannot afford it, don't go down that road. But when you have 5 pitney and the 5 pitney them sick pan, you how would that go? Right? And you plus your health insurance and stuff like that. And then it saves the lives of women and newborns. For example, you're having let's just say you have a situation, maybe rape or something, and maybe a 12-year-old get pregnant, and because the 12-year-old body is not, even though technically yes they can get pregnant, their body don't, obviously no, it's not fully developed to bring a child. So now when we get pregnant with a child and that 12-year-old could die with the baby did and she did too because her body not strong enough to push out no pitney, right? So basically, those are the benefits of family planning, right? And then the next thing that we're going to look at is the issues relating to abortion. So there are ethical concerns, right? So some people might say it's wrong. It's just wrong to kill the fetus, kill the child, and all that stuff. So there are ethical concerns, legal aspects, right? And you know that abortion is not legalized everywhere, right? In some countries, getting an abortion is very much illegal. And if them find out you get an abortion, they can go to jail, basically. And then the medical risk, right? Because when people do abortions, especially when them do it under the quiet, like some local warehouse back up or something, it put them at risk for infection, excessive bleeding, incomplete abortion, meaning the local person what they want to do, because for example in countries where abortion is illegal, let's just say them go somewhere under the counter, go try and get the abortion done. It has risk to it. And let's just say the person not do it properly, or them when they want to do the abortion, them left something inside of them, like when it's supposed inside of them, infection, and basically kill them off, right? Or mess up the urinary tract or whatever you want to call it, right? Right. So then there's also the social stigma, because people usually look down on women or people who decide to have an abortion. That's one thing. Access to care. So depending on where they're from, especially somewhere like, when you want to say Africa, maybe somewhere in a, maybe Israel, you know, there's a cool country, they know them places like Israel or them places. In places like that, it might be hard to, you know, seek help or whatever. We don't know if it's and then impact on future pregnancies, that's also a risk. So basically what we went through sexual and asexual reproduction, the structure and function of the reproductive organs, menstrual cycle, the birth process, the birth control, the importance of family planning, and the issues relating to abortion, basically, right? So basically this would be the end of the reproductive system process or the topic. However, right, so it'd be the end of the topic. But yeah, take everything with a grain of salt in it, right? But basically, these are the main areas that would fall under the reproductive system. So what you need to do is just know about these things, know about the differences, the advantages and the disadvantages, the structure and the functions, be able to explain the menstrual cycle, or if you're given a diagram, be able to interpret it, the birth process, the birth control, different methods of birth control. You have the importance of family planning, and then the issues relating to abortion, right? So these are all of the topics that we went through today.